Multiple major outlets report that a U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement (ICE) officer/agent fatally shot a 37-year-old woman, Renee Nicole Good, in Minneapolis on Wednesday, January 7, 2026, during a federal immigration enforcement operation. Reuters. +1. The shooting happened in South Minneapolis, reported near East 34th Street and Portland Avenue, and Good later died after being taken to the hospital. The Washington Post. What the federal government says happened. Self-defense narrative. Federal officials, DHS/ICE, have said the agent fired in self-defense, alleging Good used her vehicle in a way that threatened officers, often described as attempting to ram or run over agents. The anger isn't just about the shooting, it's also about how the Trump administration described it. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey's dispute. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey publicly disputed the federal account after reviewing video evidence, rejecting the characterization that Good attacked agents. Reuters reports he called the federal narrative a garbage narrative. Reuters. The Washington Post likewise reports that video/witness accounts suggested Good appeared frightened and was trying to leave, contrasting with the federal self-defense framing. The Washington Post. Governor Tim Walz and other Minnesota Democrats. Governor Tim Walz and other Minnesota Democratic leaders strongly criticized the federal operation and its escalation, describing the death as tied to aggressive enforcement tactics and calling for accountability. The Guardian reports Minnesota Democrats went further, some calling for ICE to leave the state, and described the administration's messaging as propaganda-like, again after video review. A major accelerant here is that video exists and is being cited by city/state leaders as contradicting the federal storyline. What outlets say the video shows, in broad terms, Reuters reports video shows Good hesitating and then moving slowly as agents approached, rather than deliberately trying to run over officers in an aggressive way. This is central to why Frey and others say the federal narrative doesn't match what they're seeing. The Washington Post similarly reports the video/witness accounts suggested she was spooked and trying to leave. If the video supports the slow movement/trying to leave interpretation, that can affect investigators involved. Key questions investigators will likely focus on. Based on what's been reported, the investigation usually turns on questions like immediate threat. Did the agent reasonably believe their life, or others' lives, was in imminent danger? Vehicle dynamics. Speed, direction, distance, and whether the agent had safe alternatives. Agent positioning. Was the agent in the vehicle's path, or did they move into it? Command/de-escalation. Were clear commands given, and was there time to comply? Medical response. What happened in the moments after the shooting? Who provided aid and when? On the last point, the Washington Post reports bystanders, including a physician, were blocked from providing aid until medics arrived, which has fueled outrage and could become part of the public debate about on-scene decisions. Reportedly, both federal and state investigators are involved, including the FBI and the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, BCA. Whether the agent's use of deadly force is deemed justified, whether federal statements are considered misleading, and how quickly the incident becomes a national political flashpoint about immigration enforcement. Right now, it's important to treat the video as evidence to be analyzed by investigators, not as the final verdict, because angle, context, and what happened seconds earlier can be crucial. But it clearly influenced Minnesota officials' public stance. Protests reported as large but in many places, peaceful. The Washington Post and other outlets describe protests and condemnation following the shooting, with heightened tension but protests that were described as peaceful in key moments/locations. The Guardian describes anger on the ground and confrontations around ICE movements, with public fury directed at federal operations in the city. Officials urging calm while condemning the operation. Minnesota Democratic leaders have tried to thread a needle, condemn the operation and the federal narrative, but also urge the public not to escalate into violence. The administration line. Self-defense plus officer threatened, across reporting, the administration's story emphasizes. Officers were performing enforcement work. Good posed a serious threat using her vehicle. The agent fired in self-defense. Why Minnesota officials see it as gaslighting. Minnesota officials, especially Mayor Frey, say video evidence does not support the characterization of Good as violently attacking or ramming agents. The sharper the federal language, the more it appears to local leaders like an attempt to control the narrative before investigations conclude, which is why the response has been so heated. The wider context. Why this became a national flashpoint fast. Even if this had happened in a calmer political climate, a fatal shooting during an immigration enforcement operation would be major. But it's colliding with intensified federal immigration enforcement, as described in multiple reports, ongoing national controversy over ICE tactics, and the role of sanctuary-style local policies in federal pushback. Reuters describes this as happening during a large federal immigration effort in the region, and the Washington Post frames it within broader clashes between federal immigration tactics and local political leadership. What to watch next? Practical latest developments checklist. If you're following this story in real time, these are the next high-signal updates to look for over the next 24 to 72 hours. Release of additional video, body cam, if any, surveillance footage, longer clips, alternate angles, official investigative statements, FBI/BCA confirmation of timeline, whether the agent is placed on administrative leave, whether a federal civil rights probe is opened, not confirmed yet in what I've cited. Autopsy/medical examiner information, cause/manner of death, and any corroborating details, public identification details and family statements, background, whether she was involved in protests, whether she was targeted or incidental, policy/political escalation, city/state officials demanding changes, federal officials doubling down, potential lawsuits, congressional statements, public order/National Guard talk, whether the governor takes any extraordinary steps to prevent violence amid protests. Some outlets report preparations and warnings, strongly supported across reporting. An ICE agent/officer fatally shot Renee Nicole Good in Minneapolis on January 7, 2026 during a federal enforcement action. Federal officials say it was self-defense involving her vehicle. Minneapolis leadership and Minnesota Democrats publicly dispute that account, pointing to video. The incident triggered protests and major political backlash. Investigations are underway involving FBI/BCA.